Something devastating just happened to King Charles. And while he was fighting for his life, Camilla was on a secret luxury yacht doing something so scandalous it would destroy any Queen Consort the moment it reached the public. William found out every single detail. He moved fast, seized full control, and threw Camilla out of the palace before she even had a chance to breathe. She fought back hard. What William did next left her completely humiliated and with absolutely nothing left to stand on. The king's decline. Something horrifying just happened to Charles. He had asked to be alone that evening. He wasn't well, and everyone around him knew it, but he was still the king. And when he asked for privacy, people respected it. Security took their position outside his private chambers at Balmoral and waited. That was their job. Wait and listen. What they heard next stopped every one of them cold. A loud thud, heavy, the kind of sound a body makes when it hits a floor with no warning and no time to break the fall. Security didn't wait for a second sound. They were through that door in seconds, and what they found on the other side made the blood drain from every face in that room. Charles was on the floor, completely unresponsive, the phone still lying within reach of his outstretched hand. He had been trying to make a call when he went down. He never finished the call, and what came out of that room afterward made everyone who heard it go completely silent. Reports from inside confirmed he had tried to reach Margaret 16 times that evening. 16 calls. Not once did she pick up, not once. He had sent a message between the calls, just 3 words, "Call me back." That message was read. The one he sent after that never delivered at all, because by then her phone was completely switched off, and now he was lying on the floor. The screaming started almost immediately, staff pouring into the corridor, voices overlapping each other in panic. Royal doctors were called. Every camera in and around that wing of the castle was immediately ordered to be taken down, every piece of footage secured and locked away before a single frame could reach the outside world. Within minutes, Charles was being rushed into emergency care, unconscious. He fell into a coma. In that state, he couldn't be told anything. He couldn't ask anything. He couldn't do anything. He was completely gone from the world while the world around him kept moving without him. And through all of it, through every frantic minute of that night, there was only one question on everyone's mind. Where the hell was Margaret? And you believe where the Queen Consort was? She was on a yacht, a luxury yacht in the Mediterranean, surrounded by friends she had known from her life before the crown. People who had never once had to answer to anyone inside that family. She had booked the trip weeks earlier. She had known Charles's health was declining before she left. She chose to go anyway. While her husband was lying unconscious on the floor of Balmoral, Margaret was aboard that yacht doing designer fittings. She had flown in a personal photographer to take candid images of her on the deck. And this wasn't just leisure either. There were contracts involved, deals she was in the middle of negotiating that would bring significant money directly to her, and she wasn't about to walk away from any of it. She was enjoying herself completely because as far as her mood that afternoon showed, nothing was wrong at all. In the middle of that fun, someone called her. Charles had collapsed. He was in critical condition. They told her. What flashed across her eyes in that single second wasn't fear. It was disgust. Pure, undisguised disgust. She didn't gasp. She didn't drop anything. She sat perfectly still for a moment, then slowly raised her wine glass and took one long, deliberate sip. Then she stopped. She pulled the glass away from her lips and stared at it. The wine suddenly tasted wrong to her. She stood up abruptly, walked straight to the railing of the yacht without a single word, and threw the rest of it over the side into the water below. She turned back to the gathering, smoothed the front of her outfit with both hands. She was furious, mouthed to herself that they had just had to ruin a good moment. Then she announced loudly that she needed a moment to cool off, that she would be back shortly feeling completely re-energized. No emotion, nothing. She didn't call him. She didn't cut the trip short. She didn't pack her bags and get on the first available flight back. She stayed exactly where she was and kept going as though the news had never reached her at all. Back at Kesterbrae, William heard what had happened to his father, and for the first time in a long time, he completely broke down. He shut the door, sat down, buried his face in his hands. The shock hit him harder than he expected. He hadn't been prepared for this. None of them were. Then the grief turned into something else. Anger. Cold. Immediate. Unstoppable. He started asking about Margaret. How long had she been gone? What had she known before she stepped onto that yacht? A protection officer handed him the internal report. William read it. The dates, the length of the trip, his father's condition getting worse while she was away. Every single page showed what she had chosen to do while the king was fighting for his life. When he finally put the report down, something inside him had changed. This wasn't ordinary anger anymore. Something had broken. Whatever faith he still had in Margaret disappeared in that room. Then another realization hit him just as hard. If his father never fully recovered, someone had to step forward. That someone was him. One part of him wanted nothing except to sit beside his father's bed. The other already knew the crown would not wait for him to finish grieving. He had barely managed to process any of it when the door opened. Anne and Edmund walked in. One look at their faces told him this wasn't a visit to offer comfort. Something else was coming. Something bigger. William slowly straightened in his chair. He wiped his face. Whatever was happening next, he already knew his life was about to change again. Then they revealed something almost nobody outside the palace even knew existed. A legal mechanism drafted years earlier by the late Queen Elizabeth herself. Within days of Charles's collapse, two people William trusted completely came to him with something that changed everything. Princess Anne and Prince Edmund called an emergency meeting and revealed the existence of a legal mechanism that almost nobody knew about. One that had been drafted years earlier by the late Queen Elizabeth herself. Elizabeth had never fully trusted Margaret. Not with money, not with public image, not with the kind of judgment the crown required in moments of real crisis. So she had built herself an insurance policy, a legal clause designed specifically for a situation like this one, where the king became incapacitated before an official succession could take place. The mechanism stated clearly that in that scenario, power would not default to the Queen Consort. It would transfer instead to the legitimate heir, provided two senior royals confirmed it in writing. Anne and Edmund were those two senior royals. They had known the document existed for years. They had never expected to actually use it, until now. They both signed it without hesitation. The moment the ink dried, full operational control of the royal household transferred completely to William. William moved fast. He immediately launched a full audit of the royal household, going through every ledger, every personnel file, every financial record he could get his hands on. What he found made it clear that Margaret's influence had spread much further than anyone on the outside had ever realized. Her relatives, the Parker Bowles family, had positioned themselves across royal charitable funds, palace management, and cultural projects, quietly accumulating influence over years, while nobody looked closely enough to notice how deep it went. The most powerful of them was Annabel Elliot, Margaret's own sister, who held an official role overseeing interior design and property management for the Duchy of Cornwall. She had built herself a very comfortable position inside the family's world, one that had nothing to do with any royal duty, and everything to do with who her sister had become. That ended within the first week. Annabel Elliot was in the middle of a meeting with her design staff, reviewing plans for the Duchy of Cornwall, when an aide walked in without knocking. He didn't apologize for the interruption. He didn't wait for a pause in the conversation. He told her in front of every single person in that room that her role no longer existed, effective immediately, and that the meeting needed to stop right now. Annabel Elliot tried to hold herself together. She tried to look like it hadn't hit her, but the shame was all over her face, and her own staff wouldn't look at her directly. She walked out of that room without finishing her sentence, and she didn't come back. The second she was out of sight, she grabbed her phone and called Margaret. She was furious, barely holding it together. "That stupid boy just kicked me out," she hissed into the phone. "In front of my entire staff. In front of everyone." Margaret's voice on the other end was calm, almost bored. She told her sister not to worry about it. Charles would be out for a long time, and when the moment was right, She would put that kid firmly back in his place. She said it like it was already decided, like William was a minor inconvenience she hadn't gotten around to dealing with yet. Neither of them knew what was already coming. Roughly a week after his collapse, Charles opened his eyes. The room went into immediate controlled chaos, staff rushing to stabilize him, doctors flooding in, everyone talking in urgent, clipped voices. The moment he was confirmed conscious, one instruction went out to every single person in that building. Not one word of this leaves these walls. The news was locked down so fast and so hard that nothing leaked. Not a single detail, not a whisper reached the outside world. The family needed time, and they made sure they got it. By the time Charles was lucid enough to understand what had happened around him in the days he was gone, it was already completely done. The mechanism had activated. William had full control. The audit had already torn through everything. Annabelle Elliott was already gone. None of it had required his input, and given the state he was in, none of it could realistically be undone. He didn't fight it. Then someone told him where Margaret had been, what she had been doing, what she had chosen not to do when she found out he was sick. Charles didn't ask anyone to take action on his behalf. He just went completely still, and he stopped asking about her after that. All of this had unfolded over roughly 2 weeks while Margaret was still on that yacht, still completely unaware that everything she had built inside that family had already been taken apart without her. William now held complete, uncontested control of the royal household. But Margaret was due back any day now, and she had absolutely no idea what was waiting for her when she got there. No room left for Camilla. Margaret stepped off that yacht feeling completely untouchable. She had been gone for weeks. She had her contract signed, her photographs taken, and she was coming back ready to walk straight back into her life at Balmoral as though nothing had changed. As far as she knew, nothing had. She was wrong about everything. The moment she arrived at Kesterbrae, something felt off. The staff waiting at the entrance weren't her people. They were William's, all of them. Standing there like they had been expecting her for hours, their faces giving nothing away, their posture telling her everything. She looked at them, and something cold moved through her chest, but she pushed it down immediately. She was the Queen Consort. She didn't answer to aides standing at a door. They told her what had happened, the legal mechanism, the transfer of power, the audit already underway, decisions being made without her knowledge, without her input, without her presence meaning anything at all. She looked at them like they had just said something deeply stupid. She brushed past without a single word and walked straight toward her private rooms, her heels loud against the floor, her chin up, her face a mask of complete composure. She was not going to give a single one of William's people the satisfaction of watching her react. She pushed open the door to her private rooms and stopped dead. Her own staff was in there, moving her belongings. Boxes were already half-filled, her things being lifted off shelves and wrapped up with the kind of quiet efficiency that told her this had been going on for a while before she arrived. The doors were wide open. The room that had been hers, completely and unquestionably hers, looked like it was already being cleared out for someone else. She stepped forward to walk in, and a security officer moved in front of her, blocking her. From her own room, in her own home, she stared at him. He didn't move. He didn't apologize. He didn't flinch at all. The humiliation of that single moment hit her so hard she couldn't speak for a full 3 seconds. Her own staff was inside that room, watching. Staff who had answered to her for years, who had dressed her, organized her schedule, managed her life inside these walls, and not one of them came forward. Not one of them said anything. They kept their eyes down and kept packing. She turned around and walked away. No confrontation, no screaming, no demands. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't make it worse, and some part of her knew it. She left quietly, and that quiet was the most humiliating thing of all, because Margaret had never been a woman who left quietly. But that was only the beginning. In the days that followed, someone from inside her own inner circle talked. Someone she had trusted completely, someone who had sat at her table and eaten her food and smiled at her face, went directly to senior members of the family and laid everything out. Her spending, her friend circle, the contracts on the yacht, and the one thing that nobody could defend, that she had known about Charles's collapse and had chosen not to call him even once. Not a word of it went public. No press, no headlines. It stayed entirely behind palace walls, which in some ways made it worse, because there was nothing for her to fight. No story to deny, no reporter to call a liar, no public narrative she could shape to her advantage. The family simply knew, and one by one, every person who had stayed neutral or quietly sympathetic toward her withdrew, completely and permanently. Her remaining allies tried. They had nothing to work with. With the family already turned against her internally and nothing public to appeal to, their support meant absolutely nothing. Within days of her return, a sealed formal decree was delivered directly to Margaret. She opened it alone. Her operational powers were gone, stripped down to almost nothing. Her financial privileges and the full budget that had funded her office were cut to the bare minimum, enough to function, not enough to operate with any real authority. Her honorary patronages, every public-facing role she had built over years of carefully managed appearances, were revoked completely. Her involvement in the dynasty's public life was over, and then she reached the final clause. She was required to leave Balmoral immediately and return to Raymill House, her own private countryside estate, not a royal residence, her own private property, the place she had come from before any of this. She was being sent back pending when Charles was ready to face her. No one knows what he would say to her. Would he be done with her this time around? Would it be truly over? A few doubted because Charles had always forgiven her no matter what, but maybe not this time. She packed her things herself. The staff that remained available to her were minimal, and the halls she walked through on her way out were the same halls she had walked through every day for years, as though they belonged to her. They had felt like hers. She had treated them like hers. And now she walked through them one last time with boxes and bags, the sound of her own footsteps the only thing accompanying her out. Nobody came to see her off. Nobody stood at the door. She left the way she had arrived all those years ago, quietly, without ceremony, without the family watching. He didn't take her crown. He just made sure it meant nothing.